Breaking news, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for LeBron's return. Reportedly out tonight against the Knicks. We're hoping that LeBron would be able to come back. He initially hurt that ankle way back on March the 20th against the Hawks. Came back a couple of weeks ago for a couple games, but then it was last week when word came out that they wanted to rest him a little bit because the ankle was bothering him again, and now just a handful of games to go. He would only potentially be able to play in 3 games of the regular season after tonight before the potential play-in tournament. That's where the Lakers are likely headed right now. A game and a half behind Portland, and the Blazers have the tiebreaker. Lakers taking on the Knicks tonight. No LeBron in that one. Now targeting a return tomorrow against the Rockets, and then they go back-to-back Saturday and Sunday at Indy and at New Orleans before a potential play-in game a week from tonight. So a lot of basketball ahead for these Lakers if they don't move up into 6th place. Let's bring in Rip Hamilton, the NBA champ. Rip, we were talking earlier like LeBron was going to play tonight because it seemed like that's what was going to happen. How concerning is it that it seems like each day they're pushing this thing back a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more?
Not really eye-opener or concerning, just on the simple fact that, hey, we know that the Lakers only have 4 games left, and most likely LeBron James, knowing that they got back-to-back games, that he is not going to play back-to-back in back-to-back games. So I just feel as though that when you look at the Lakers and you look where they're slotted at, they're slotted in the number 7 seed. And, hey, yes, you don't want to have to play in extra games because the more games you got to play, the more miles it adds up on LeBron James' legs. So I just feel as though when you look at the Lakers right now, I think they're better off set in the 7th or 8th seed, because once you start fighting for that 6th seed, as you alluded to, Portland's a game and a half ahead of them. First round matchup is against the Los Angeles Clippers. And if there's a team in the Western Conference that I think that can beat the Los Angeles Lakers, I believe it's the Clippers. They got star power at multiple positions. LeBron James cannot take plays off on the defensive end, knowing that they got great wing players in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I believe if they're slotted at the 7th and 8th seed and they got to win a couple play-in games and their first matchup is against the Phoenix Suns or the Utah Jazz, I don't see them 2 teams giving the Lakers a serious problem of getting out of the first round like the Clippers do.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of that. Yeah, if you get the 7 seed, you face the Phoenix Suns. If you get the 8 seed, you would face likely, this is likely projecting out, the Utah Jazz. But then, Rip, I mean, you're playing with fire a little bit, because if you are in that play-in tournament and you're a 7 or an 8 seed, you're 2 losses away from having your season end before you even get into that first round of the postseason. Why don't you seem to be concerned for the Lakers in the play-in tournament?
Because if you look at LeBron James in his career and the times that he won the NBA championship, he was never worried about home court advantage, and he was never worried about seeding. I think the top teams are more worried than actually the Los Angeles Lakers, because if I'm sitting there in the number 1 seed and let's say the Los Angeles Lakers end up being the number 8 seed, I would be sitting there complaining, to everybody in my locker room and even to the media, like, how are we the number 1 seed? We put in all this work all long to be the best team in the Western Conference, but we got to play the Los Angeles Lakers, the team that won the NBA championship last year, and their 2-star players is back. So I'm more concerned with the top 2 teams other than the Los Angeles Lakers.
Well, when you look at the odds, the Lakers are still the favorites in the Western Conference, even though they're likely headed for that play-in tournament. So that kind of backs up what you're saying, that LeBron shouldn't be worried about that, shouldn't be worried about seeding, shouldn't be worried about maybe having to beat a Memphis team or a San Antonio team to keep their season alive. But as it stands right now, you'd be worried about a matchup with the Clippers. Would you put your money on the Lakers as the favorites in the West, or would you go elsewhere right now?
Well, if the Lakers match up against the Clippers, it's 50-50. Because the Clippers are starting to play really good basketball right now. Yeah, they've been hurt with injuries with Patrick Beverly and a couple core players on that ball club. But they're finding their rhythm and their timing at the right time. And I just believe that they got enough guys on their team that is not scared of LeBron James. Because there's a lot of guys in the league that still has that fear factor of knowing that, hey, when we match up against the Los Angeles Lakers and they got LeBron James they still look at LeBron James as their Michael Jordan. But when you look at the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard doesn't look at him like that. Paul George doesn't look at him like that. So I feel as though if there's a team in the Western Conference that can beat the Los Angeles Lakers, it's the Clippers. I just think that they're too good, they're too big for, let's say, a team like the Phoenix Suns. I think that they got a little bit more not a little bit, a lot more star power than the Utah Jazz, and I just don't think they have enough to get by the Los Angeles Lakers.
If you had to guess right now, LeBron James has said he doesn't expect to be 100% this season or maybe any season the rest of his career. What kind of LeBron are we going to see in the postseason?
Well, first of all, Chris, I can attest to that no NBA player that played a full NBA season or even half the season is going into the playoffs healthy. Everybody's a little dinged up, if it's an ankle, a groin, a hamstring, but a lot of stuff is not really talked about, or, the media really doesn't know. But everybody's hurt right now. The one thing about LeBron James that has that when you look at his injury is not a hamstring injury. It's not a groin injury. Injuries that over time, if you constantly keep playing on them, they're only going to get worse. You need rest for them injuries to recover. It's an ankle. So I've played in many big games with a sprained ankle, where I wasn't as fast or I wasn't as quick, but I was still able to get the job done. And I think LeBron, 90% of LeBron James is still better than 90% of the NBA. So I don't think it's a big worry when you're talking about his ankle injury.
All right, Rip Hamilton, not worried at all. Says the Lakers are going to be just fine, even if LeBron is going to miss some more time here before returning here at the end of the regular season. He is out tonight, hopefully back tomorrow. Thank you so much, Rip. One more time, a look at the West playoff picture. Most teams with 4 games to play, some down to 3 games. Jazz trying to hold on to that #1 seed. Suns still have a chance to get there. Clippers and Nuggets battling it out for that 3 seed. And, of course, everybody trying to avoid that 7 seed, everybody being the LA Lakers, the only team with an opportunity to climb out of that play-in tournament and get up to where Portland is in that 6 seed. But it's not going to be easy because they're a game and a half back, and the Blazers have the tiebreaker.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.